So, Josh, it's a pleasure to be with you today. And for all of you joining us, it's a pleasure introducing you to Josh. Josh has become a friend of mine over the last numbers of years. And I know him as Josh, I know him as Dr. Josh, and I know him as Dr. Joshua Freitas. And so please explain to our friends
Sure.
who you are and what you do.
Thanks, Rick. It truly is an honor to be here. My name's Josh. I'm a gerontologist and aging neuroscientist. So I study the aging process and then also how that shapes the brain with intentionally designed spaces or interactions to improve quality of life for seniors. And I have the honor of being here with Rick, which I'm honored because the opportunities that come our way is so great. So Rick Voight here is the CEO of Vivid-Pix, and just seeing the opportunity to work together on photo reminiscence therapy, how to use a photo, and then also our connections with several societies has helped us grow and get into more doors and make a bigger impact. So I'm gracious for that. Thank you.
Wonderful working with you. We've been spending a lot of time over the last numbers of years, oftentimes thinking about Alzheimer's and dementia and helping those with Alzheimer's, dementia, and their caregivers. But photoreminiscence therapy can actually help more than simply those with cognitive decline. Can you explain that a little bit?
Sure thing. So it's so impactful for Alzheimer's and related types of dementia because they revisit older memories. So it's easy for them to recall. But oftentimes with reminiscence therapy, it's really important to keep the brain healthy. So I always compare it to kind of a highway. The more we use that highway, the stronger that highway gets, the more resources come to that highway. So once we stop using it, the synapse isn't as agile. So for someone that's just a senior aging in place, it's really important to be able to use photo-based reminiscence therapy because it actually cognitively stimulates parts of the brain that are key for memory, like the hippocampus or amygdala or the frontal temporal lobe. All of these can help with judgment calls, creativity. So yes, looking at a photo might just be, we think, oh, we're just looking at photos, but there's a whole cognitive benefit. And it can actually help with so many other social aspects of life that can get people out of the door engaging and revisiting things that's so powerful.
So we read about exercising our brains and brain health. And as we age, I happen to be over 60, we're directed to make sure that we're doing active things with our brains as we age. How do you think family history and working with our old photos can help people, and the memory station even, because you're learning new things, can help people?
For sure. What I love about a photo is, yes, you can exercise, you can do trivia questions, you can get that brain stimulated. And there's feelings associated with that. But the power of a photo not only stimulates the brain, it has feelings and connections. Those connections can create actually a ripple habit where people want to look at more photos, have more conversations. So I always say the power of a photo, yes, cognitively and emotionally, it helps. But it also creates connection, which is so important for seniors. And more than just saying, oh, we're keeping our brain healthy, but our social ability, our relationships, and the power of a legacy. Everybody wants to share their story as we want it to because it shapes future generations.
It's interesting as I reflect on some of the work that I've personally done with my images, and depending on my mood, I might remember different things. So I might remember, how did I interact with my dad at one point, or what was the impact he made on me and the impact I'm making on my daughter as being the father at this time. It's interesting how our minds can remember different things at different times.
What I love about a photo is that you can revisit a photo at different emotional states. So you can visit a photo when you're happy, when you're sad, when you're just trying to think, or just a pastime even to look at a photo. But the emotional states, depending on what emotional state you're in to revisit that photo, you could have a completely different experience. And then when you open it up now, there's two people looking at that photo, there's a shared consciousness. So now you have even more to talk about emotions in between. So that's why I love is that a photo isn't a one-time thing. You can revisit that photo several times and have a completely different experience around it.
If we transition to how people are reminiscing with their photos, the memory station as an example, we're we've provided a tool that people are able to scan to then restore, to record voice memories, to then create a movie video. How can the activities of that new learning and work help people exercise their brain?
Well, I think it's multimodality, which I love, as there's so many things into that. You have auditory, you have visual. But I also love one of the great things with aging is novel learning, learning new things, which research indicates that it might prevent the risk of dementia. But new technology, actually being exposed to something new and exploring that. So the process of that is very powerful to keep the brain healthy. So now, not just the reminiscent side of a photo, it's also the process of scanning, thinking about what you're going to share, how you're going to share that, even the tone and speed. And just you sharing some of the videos with me, it's amazing to see people will pause for a second and fill that space with a new story or a change or a pattern. And getting people to think about what stories they want to share with this with a photo can be really powerful. So not just revisiting it once, but how many stories actually associate with one photo. And you get that. I've noticed it in the videos you've shared. People will pause and take another direction. So it gets people to kind of go down this river of agility, which is really healthy for the brain.
Cool. As I interact with different people using the system in different ways, I happen to like winging it often. And I also watch people that want to make sure that they cover certain things as they're recording the stories. So they will write the story, and it comes out more and more with genealogy. So people will make sure dates and places and specifics come out. Does the writing, does the creation help the brain in different ways?
For sure. There's tons of things on creativity and neuroscience. So, that agile space of not knowing how things will fall or how things will come out, the unpredictability, but visualizing what you want, executing on it, has a great neurological benefit. You're using your frontal lobe, your hippocampus, your amygdala, tapping into your auditory cortex. So, it's a multimodality process, the whole thing of scanning them, putting them together. What I love is you can revisit that so many times. It's not just that, there's something called a reflective gene or a mirror neuron. So when I listen to you tell a story, anything I associate with that story, I'm pulling from my memory. So it's not just that person reliving it, you're also stimulating my brain by
Yes.
listening to your story.
Yes. And which is how I mean, just literally what we're going through right now. When you're saying something that reflects on my memories, I'm reacting, we're having a conversation, and I'm A, thinking about how I will respond, which we often do in conversation, but two, it creates the relationship between two people, which is wonderful.
Yeah. And what I love is it doesn't have to just be two people either. It could be so many different people looking at a photo. Like in my mind, if I had to visualize as a group of people sitting and looking at a photo or watching these stories around a Thanksgiving dinner, where now you have the grandkids there, it's multi-generational. Now you have all those stories that people can relate to. So it's kind of a joint consciousness, I would almost say, is that everybody is just sharing it through their own lens, which is really healthy for bringing cohort of family together, but also creating connection and relationships.
So I don't want to throw out buzzwords, but I was having a conversation with somebody yesterday, and I'm fortunate that we spent time together. Um, Epistemology, is that what it's called?
Yeah. So epistemology is a term where you break down our ways of knowing. And that is through the things we see, how we see, our cultural background, what we bring to the table to help us view or see how things come out. So your epistemology might be different than mine, or a senior now, they're at the upper part of their life, so they're viewing things differently, where they don't have to think about vocation or school or college. Their view or lens on something is different than a younger person. So the term epistemology is just how we view things, our way of knowing, which is feelings, sight, cognition, propositional knowledge, and so much more. But all of us view things a little differently.
And it feels like that's one of the things when we talk about multi-generational conversation, right? Because you have an older adult who may be able to reflect on their past to provide some advice to someone who's coming up, as opposed to somebody who's looking at, the future and the way it's going to be, i.e., that different lens.
Yeah, and what I love is this kind of that agile conversation where, for example, say it's a wedding. You might be looking at a wedding photo. The grandparent might be sharing their story of the struggles of saving and putting it together. And then you have a young, newly about to be married, and they're just going on a cruise and having two people go. It's a completely different experience that both people can learn from one another, and they can ask questions and engage. Why would you do that? Or how do you do that? And getting people to think a little differently can be really powerful.
So we've been exploring isolation and loneliness and its impact on health. How do you think reminiscing can improve the detrimental effects of isolation and loneliness?
We really saw the impacts during COVID of social isolation. So, knowing the importance and what happens cognitively, photos can be so powerful where maybe it's revisiting somewhere they've been before, they want to go back to, they can relive that. But it also gets people out of the door to talk more. People want to share stories, and we're actually social beings. So, for us to stay home, it's not healthy. It's important for us to have socialization. I also think it's important. There's a difference between alone and loneliness. Some people just like to be alone, that's okay. But when it's loneliness of the draw of wanting to be with people and wanting to have that, it's incredibly healthy. A photo can be really powerful, and it's not just a photo that you and I bring to the table. A photo in advertising, if you use the right photo, it could get somebody out there. So a council on aging showing people having fun and that events are well filled can maybe get that senior to get out of that house and want to go down and see people, but things that they can relate to too as well. So a photo can help people have connections, or say it's tennis or vocations. So a photo can create that relationship, even if it's a son or daughter, pulling open that and saying, "Oh, well, you loved to bake. Why don't we go down to the store and get some stuff?" Now, it might be a small introduction to socialization, but you're talking to the clerk behind it, you're getting stuff, you're looking through a cookbook. So a photo is a great vessel to open the door to so many other things to do, which does open the door for more socialization. Also, a photo, I see this a lot. People will see a photo and say, "I haven't talked to them in forever," and pick up that phone and call. So, a photo, even in just the house, can trigger that next step to help people see what to do next. So, if we intentionally place certain photos, know the impacts of a photo, we could use those to actually boost socialization as well.
Makes way too much sense because we all know that we can see a photo, remember an event, remember a person, and be compelled to say, "Dude, it's been so long. How are you?" And that's probably going to help you. And it's also going to rekindle the relationship with that other person. And that other person is going to appreciate you're reaching out and saying, "Hey."
Yeah, and it opens the door for so many things. What I love, even beyond just the phone call, is now when you people will revisit a photo differently. So you and I could look at it, and I love when there's actually disagreement of what happened in an event because it creates more conversation.
Yep.
Somebody might say, "Oh, this is what we did, and this is what happened." The other person looking at the photo said, "That didn't happen. This is how it is." And it's that perception of getting people to have that conversation and finding a happy medium, but that's neurologically really healthy for social connection. So I actually like when people look at a photo and disagree with what that event's about or what it is, because it creates more healthy conversation than us all just saying, "Oh, that's great, that's what it was," and then the next photo. But having a little bit of that opportunity to have more conversation is great for the brain.
It makes way too much sense. If in fact we're using photo reminiscence and activities to pull people together in order to learn about doing activities like this, do you see a way that we can have positive proactivity and get people out the door by using this as a tool to get them out the door? So I guess if I pull that all the way back, we're going to have a session at XYZ Library and we're going to be reminiscing and helping you fill in the blank. Thoughts?
Yeah, I think photos can be powerful. And one word I want people to think about is intentional. Intentional photos. How do you use a photo? This could literally be you want your mother to come to your granddaughter's dance. So maybe you actually get some photos of her in prior dances and you bring them over to her and just leave them at her house so that she has that she's remembering about those things. So you're prepping or planting seeds to get the next step of something. So intentionally using a photo to create a next action can be really powerful. And events are great ways because you see other people talking about their stories. It gets them excited. For example, if I had to think of a perfect story, it would be a senior going to an event, hearing people talk about their story, and they remember having photos, and they know they're in the shoebox up in that closet. And when they get home, they're saying, let's pull these photos out because they have a story to share too. Or I totally forgot about that photo and I know we have it. So it's a great thing as just introducing multiple people's stories to get more action.
So that drives me to think about programming, which is if we've got a series of activities daily, weekly, in order to pull people out of their homes because they've got something fun to do, you might have a more forward person that starts the conversation, that more reflective person to be having that cognition, and then to say, let us. So next Wednesday, we're going to be getting together and talking about fill in the blank. And now that more laid back person could be more proactive, more like the first person.
For sure. And I think it's kind of like a race. When you run in a race, you only run so far, but when you run with somebody else and they're a better runner than you go further.
Yes.
So I think it's also intentionally pairing people up the right way too. So having a senior that's very comfortable talking about their story, you might have somebody that just listens, but they might go home and then tell their daughter about a whole nother story. It just gets them socializing more.
So, can you think of any ways that reminiscing specifically can help people reduce isolation and loneliness? Examples.
Yeah, I think we all have stories. The scary thing is when we stop sharing our stories because it's easy to become withdrawn. And I think that's at any age. If I stopped sharing my stories, you did, we might pull away from society. So I think it's encouraging people in a positive way to share their stories as long or deep as they are. And sharing story doesn't have to be, hey, Rick, write down your story, but it could be, hey, mom, I'm looking for a new job. I know that you changed your career. What was that like? Or do you have any advice on this? Or can you help this? Or hey, can you talk to the granddaughter? She doesn't want to do dance anymore. I know it's really important for you. You love seeing her. Can you chat with her about it? That's a great way they can take their life experience and actually work it in. So, yes.
So the multi-generational makes all the sense in the world. I also think my life. So I love traveling the United States, as you well know. And I love when people say, are there any special places that you have found? Or I've always been interested in X. Have you ever been to those types of places? And it's prompting the other person to be on the stage and and sharing in a positive way.
For sure. Let me use this as an example, though. Give me one place is the best place you would recommend for me to visit, knowing a little bit about me.
So you love nature, and you talked a little bit previously that your kids like hiking a little bit.
Yeah.
So let's say that you had an amazing adventure, you wanted to schedule an amazing adventure, and you were able to go out to the West Coast in California, and you were able to bring the kids into a giant redwood forest. And these trees are just massive.
So, what we just relived or didn't relive is you just brought me on an experience. That experience could take me weeks, months to plan, financial, but you just created a whole scene for me in my brain, which I think is healthy. And that's why I wanted to break that down because stories, that short story took you what, less than 30 seconds? In my brain, I just relived 2 weeks of a vacation. So keeping in mind that our brains process so fast that just a quick story or quick example can get somebody to relive or think so much more. I was thinking of my kids there, what they were wearing, what they're looking at. And all of that would be weeks of preparing and shopping and planning, but we just did that in 30 seconds. So it's a perfect example of how fast our brains operate.
Totally. And I'm thinking about your son as an example, and um, the stormtrooper in one room within your house. And the stormtrooper, if you remember one of the Star Wars, where the Jedis are screaming through the giant forests.
Yeah.
And now he could experience, yeah, that's what these trees could be like.
Yeah. And see that collective sharing is that's an experience you've already experienced. I've never experienced it, but it just created a really rich conversation.
Yeah, fun. So transitioning a little bit, reminiscing, lots of positive reasons why somebody might be interested in doing it. You've developed a couple of classes one for friends and family to interact with people, and another professional series of course, or a course series. Could you explain the differences between those two?
Yeah, sure thing. So the word I keep using is intentional. So what that does is it creates a system of how do you use a photo within a system to really have a big impact. If you just look at photos, yes, you can pass time, but to actually be engaged actually change you on a DNA level. Your telomeres start to change. So the goal is to actually give people the tools to unpack a photo and really get a conversation going. So it's a system that we've created for both professionals and non-professionals to be able to make sure that they can use a photo to their full ability. And at home, that might be, okay, this is a photo, this is how you unpack it, here's some conversation starters, which is a great way just to get used to it. For a professional, it's how to use a photo to achieve non-photo based outcomes. So that might be getting somebody to walk down a hall. You have their favorite picture of their son down there and say, hey, we got to walk down to that picture. I want you to tell me about it. Is now you're working in how many steps they can get to use that photo. So it's a tool to help people think out of the box to be more successful for both of their roles, both personal and also professional.
We've been talking in without those with cognitive decline, maybe making the switch here a little bit for those with cognitive decline. And I know personal experience, the benefit of allowing someone to reflect and remember and to create the connection, the conversation with a loved one, and finding it beneficial for that person and myself. So again, kind of the friends and family. So can you think of a few examples or any examples on how people are able to enjoy their lives with their loved ones using photos?
For sure. So a lot of times, most types of dementia, they might not remember what they had for breakfast or what they did maybe 15, 20 minutes ago, but they can remember 30 years ago. So finding what photos are really resonating. Keep in mind, some photos might not be appropriate or the right ones, but finding the ones that really create joy, because that feeling will still for a long period of time. But also keep in mind that somebody with dementia, it takes their brain a little bit of time to get really grooving. So I'll give an example. When I talk to somebody with dementia, I start with just simple conversation. But before I know it, 10, 15 minutes in, and they're having conversation, they just need a little bit of time to really get that brain activating. So a photo, the same idea is slipping in some photos, maybe even showing photos that you brought that you want to talk about first, then transition to photos where you can start asking questions. And that's why I think when people are intentional about the process they use, it can be a much more successful program or engagement that they have. But the goal is that it's going to take a little bit of time for the brain to juvenate. But honestly, in the research we did, it was great to see, yes, people wouldn't talk the first like minute of the thing. And the next thing you know, by the end, they're doing all the talking and they're sharing all their stories. Is I think there's a stigma that, oh, they have dementia, they're not going to remember this. People with dementia rely very heavily on how you make me feel. So those feelings can be triggered and actually motivated in action when you show a good photo, especially selecting intentionally photos that bring joy, like pets or grandkids smiling and giggling or a past event that they really love. That can actually change the mood for the rest of the day.
In reflecting on our previous research, I'm reminded of the benefits of sharing photos before eating, and that someone could be sharing a story that is not hesitant to speak, recalling the story, utilizing their photo, and the person who may be um, more withdrawn and or less apt to eat more comfortably or eat comfortably, that all of a sudden, because the conversation is going on, they get distracted with their concerns.
Yeah, so photos, once again, to be used for non-photo based outcomes is looking at photos like you shared of foods or past holidays where they cooked or their favorite recipe. Not just one, are we learning more about that person that makes us better caregivers or whatever it is to know what they want to eat. It also gets them to start thinking about, oh, it's going to get time for food. It makes them hungry. That's going to help them eat more food, which often can be a challenge with dementia. So it's using a photo intentionally at a certain time of the day, positioned the right way that creates conversations that has outcomes that aren't photo based related.
and what was wonderful about the study we previously did, and of course the study that we're currently doing, is we were able to share photos at a table, and the group around the table began talking about their memory, and somebody else who might be more withdrawn, not talking comfortably about their photos and are not eating comfortably, all of a sudden they are eating because they're just relaxed.
Yeah, and that's part of the stigma, I think. Oftentimes, so we know people go through a journey with dementia, and people in later stages sometimes they don't show how actively they might be listening or engaged. So they might be sitting there a little bit more secluded. But it's amazing when you see off the periphery that they're listening maybe far away. The next thing you know, they're grabbing for a photo or they're grabbing for something, or out of nowhere, and I've seen this all the time, they'll say, "Oh, a guitar." And you're like, "Whoa, I haven't heard them talk in a while." And it's because you were just talking about music. So sometimes they are percolating in the way that they can,
Yeah.
maybe off to the side. But society often is, oh, they have dementia, so they don't engage as much just because they don't initially show it.
Yeah.
But I always say that having more people around a table, regardless of their abilities, there's an impact behind looking at photos and talking and reminiscing.
So in a professional environment, whether it be home caregiving or within a living location, i.e., assisted living type of location, can you think how the professional caregiver might use photos to activate, for lack of a better word, the person they're giving care to?
For sure. So I know in the program, when people go through the learning, it's intentional, but we also talk about prescribing photos. The idea behind that is finding how you can use a photo to get people to engage. And that might be as simple as having a picture of a bathroom on the picture of the bathroom, because somebody might not be able to cognitively know what that room is. So using photos people can relate to. But not just that, but I love in a residential setting, for example, ask your staff to bring in their high school photo and put them up all over the walls and ask residents to guess who they are. Guarantee you that will foster that relationship. So, in that training system, what you do is you learn about how to use those tools to actually create connection amongst groups of people. So, it's not just, oh, let's look at a photo, but it's how do you use that photo to create connection and improve quality of life for anybody that's associated to that photo.
It's fun. You've brought it up previously as well, of having the caregiver share their memories first, and to be both the photo as well as that person's memories be the prompt. And then if we also have the loved one, those needing care, to have the photos that are similar to the caregivers. That high school photo could be the caregiver's high school photo, as well as the person receiving care, their high school photo. And naturally, that person receiving the care is going to talk about their idea, their remembrance of.
Yeah. And what I love, just to unpack what you were just saying too, is that gets somebody to say, "Oh, that's so funny. That's what they look like. Like, that's you." And then the next thing you know, they're saying, "Oh, where did we put our photos?" It gets those photos to be reused again. They don't belong in a shoebox, they belong to be out there and be talked about. So, what it does is it gets people out there to actually do it. And what I love about technology is the ability, if you scan all of those, now you can have a conversation right in front of you where you can click and look at different things. And with technology entering into the space, you can enhance that quality. I've seen a lot of photos, you can almost not make them out. You enhance them, and the next thing you know, they're talking all about the photo. So it's fascinating to see that that connection can create so many other opportunities for connection.
Totally. And I've seen a lot of those photos that need to look better too.
So Rick, we've worked quite a bit, and I know I bring the aging aspect, and you bring more the photo aspect. But in your opinion, I've noticed that there's epiphanies that are constantly surfacing, and the conversations we have are so rich. In your opinion, what would you share as some simple tools for people to save photos, and what should they do with those photos? What would you recommend to them?
At 80,000 feet, we do have so many photos, so many memories that are sitting in shoe boxes, that are sitting in albums, that are sitting in closets, that have such joy inside of them. that we're not tapping into. So get them out of the closet. Two is some people will educate and say, do all of the scanning at one time. And that way, the task is done. I personally think organization so that you know where the images are is important. But I think there are so many wonderful memories that are going to be brought forward as you are organizing that you should be enjoying while you're doing the work, as opposed to, I have to get the scanning done, because it took a lifetime for you to capture all of these memories. So to think that you're just going to turn an analog mess into a digital mess because I'm going to scan, that's work as opposed to having fun.
Plus, you also lose out on the process. It's like, okay, I'm gonna build something with my son, and if I don't actually slow down and take each step, really the process isn't it's not as influential. So what I'm hearing is that they really need to slow down in bite-sized pieces to really enjoy the experience. So something that always pops in my mind from neurological behavior is it's not about the task, but it's about the experience.
Yes,
And really, what it is getting those out and creating an experience over time that can really resonate.
absolutely. And especially if two people are working together on it. So let's say that it is a mother and daughter, and the daughter is being a little bit of technical assistance for the mother, and her grandchild that is doing a little bit of technical assistance for the grandparent. And they're able to go through stages of life of the grandparent. All of a sudden, that connection is able to be discussed, and the older person is able to reflect and be that younger person at the same time. And that younger person is able to think of that older person as being, wow, you are that same age in this conversation as I am today.
It's actually, you're making me think. So I was away recently and seeing my mom show photos on her phone with my daughter. And it's amazing to take that step back and just see that kind of experience happen. So being that in between must be really great too, as well. But thank you very much.
Absolutely. Other thoughts?
Okay. So a little bit off the beaten path, but I wanted to ask, you travel so much and you see so many people as it associates to photos. What are some trends that you see for people in the conversations they're having around photos?
I see people going through this mass digitization path. And when I use the phrase turning an analog mess into a digital mess, that is what's happening. So if you fill up a box with albums and envelopes of pictures and send it out, all that you have accomplished is the digitization, which from a safety perspective is wonderful. But you're not bringing forth yet the stories on why you took the pictures in the first place. And I see a lot of people struggling with that step of bringing forth the stories. And that's why in our education with Laura Hedgecock, we wanted to help people feel more comfortable with bringing forth the stories of different times in our lives.
You bring up a good point because having a shoebox and a closet up on the shelf isn't helping anybody. And just putting all of your digital photos into a folder and leaving it there is just as, I guess, not as influential. So to be able to pull those out and create the stories and record them and make it truly something somebody can engage in. So.
Absolutely. And I'll reflect on a personal one. So I met my wife when I was a freshman in college. And with a few photos, I was able to bring forth a memory, and I had no idea where I was going to go to when scanning and beginning my story. But it brought forth in me how much I love my wife, and the goodness that she has brought forth in me all these years that we've been together. And my daughter saw that video, that Vivid-Pix story, and she said, I've heard that story my whole life, but I'd never seen the pictures. And she is older than we were when we met, because I was 18 years old. And she said in a very fun way, boy meets girl, and I'm the result. And the truth is, yep, here, hit on a girl my freshman year in college, and we're a family today. So one of the things that we have worked through as a family is that we wanted to make sure that my stepfather had time where he was able to take care of errands or have his time. And we were concerned with having my mom by herself. And so we hired care that would come and spend a couple hours with her a couple days a week. And I've seen wonderful interaction, and I've seen not as positive interaction, not just with my mom, but in other conversations I've had with others. How do you think we can help excite the caregiver to say, this is why I want to work with older adults? I'm able to have an impact on these older adults by bringing forth these stories. How can we excite the caregiver?
Yeah, I think it's also allowing them to have the opportunity to share their story. It's always a two-way street in every conversation in most cases. So making sure that that caregiver has an opportunity to share a little bit of their life through their story with that senior. Now, it's not just all them, but that opens the door. Once you create relationship, it's very easy to grow that relationship. But what I see that often happens is we create a divide, worker and resident. So then automatically that's what it is. But at the end of the day, when you take that apart, it's two humans that can have a conversation. And I think relatability is really important. So oftentimes you'll see that we do life bios for seniors so that we know who we're caring for. So what they like, what they don't. Why aren't we doing that same thing for the caregiver so that that resident can actually read it and learn about their caregiver? What do they like to do? Obviously, there's some touchy subjects that you might not want to include, but really things like, do they have kids? Do they were they a base? Did they play baseball in high school? I think that could open the conversation for nostalgia for both of them to share, but also creates human connection. So that's why I feel like we create a lot of divides by saying you're worker and you're resident, and we lose that human connection. But I guarantee you, you care for your parent so well. So creating that relationship for a caregiver to feel like they're caring for their mom and dad is going to just improve care. So you want to create that relationship and focus on that primarily.
I love the direction of that finding ways, and hopefully photos can be one of the ways, but finding the ways for the caregiver to want to get to know more about the other. And one of the ways that we can get the other person to share is to share our own stories. And we do like speaking of the things that we do. So it might be the caregiver, um, filling in the blank obviously has nothing to do with me, but it might be, I brought my XYZ child to school for the first time, or we went to the soccer game yesterday and this is what happened. And all of a sudden that relationship, yes, those are normal conversations, but to be thoughtful in the approach, using a PRT method might be helpful.
For sure. And I think anytime you have a relationship, care improves. If you think about it, like a doctor that has a great bedside can improve care in that process so much. But once you don't have that and there's a break in rapport, it can really affect care because sometimes they say, oh, I don't want them to care for me, or I don't want them to bring me in the shower. But I've seen this so many times in care settings. I want so and so to take care of me. I want so and so to help me with my medicine. I want so and so. And when you look at that, you see a relationship. And most of the time, those relationships are because they slow down, they're at each other's level, and they have stories and conversations. And you can specifically see they can quote stuff about each other's lives. They've created that rapport amongst each other, which is a relationship now. So, Rick, a really important thing is for caregivers to have access to information to know more about the resident. Do you have any suggestions or ideas or any type of approaches that you would recommend that they should take?
Couple of thoughts, actually. If you look around a room, you'll probably see some knickknacks, or as my mom used to call them, dust collectors. And those knickknacks generally have a story behind them. And it could be something like a snow globe. It can be a trinket. And by bringing those into the conversation, all of a sudden you've got the connection. Photo albums, of course, that you might see a photo album on a shelf, and to bring it off the shelf to engage in the conversation in order to say, oh my gosh, this is your wedding album. Those stories will start coming out. And then more proactively is to either work with the family and or to work with the individual to help them in the photo collection and organization process. You probably have boxes filled with stuff, or you're about to go into senior living and you need to go through all of your things. How are you going to approach getting your memories, innuendo intended, in order now that you're going to have less space?
What I love is that you just opened so many doors. And I think it's just equipping caregivers with the right resources to know how to engage. So, the right questions to ask. Like, what is that knickknack? Where did you get it? Tell me more about it. As I feel like through a system of helping people know how to use a photo intentionally can make a really big impact, or anything around the house they can leverage. Because most people aren't. They're not always looking at what's around the house, but there's so many rich opportunities to create conversation.
So one of the things that I do hear about as I travel is that the family may be in a different location than the loved one, and they need someone to go and help keep that person happy and engaged by the family having the proactive step and helping the caregiver do their activities maybe better. The child can really have a lot of impact even if distant. I hear often, I wish I had that, i.e. the memory station, when I was going through X. So what does that mean? Too often we don't ask the questions we wish we had asked while the person was around. I've lost my dad a decade ago, and there are times that I sure wish he was around for me to ask. And if we had been able to go through some of the interactions in order to have and use the prompts of the photos. So dad, you put everything on the line when you moved from Illinois to New York in order to open up a dealership. And how did you do that? Why did you do that? How did you overcome? How did you succeed? You were knocked down once or twice in your life. How did you achieve? And too often we don't spend enough time thinking about tomorrow because we expect it always to be there.
So, Rick, one thing is that we're seeing more and more momentum of people wanting to participate in research or be part of that research. Do you have any ideas or tips for people that might want to participate in future research or to help grow the field of photo based reminiscence therapy?
So first off, the new research that we're doing is covering the seven stages of dementia often thought about, where stage one is no cognitive decline, stage two, three, typical decline, and until the point where, of course, you've got quite a bit decline. And what we would love is the family to say we're wishing to be part of the process in order for us to be able to gain the knowledge ourselves, because you folks are professional, you've been a thoughtful process in order to go after and gain this knowledge, and then B, we'd like to be part of the solution. And I think most people are giving people, so wouldn't it be wonderful to be able to have your work interaction be helping others?
I love that. Fantastic.
So Josh, we've established a program, as you know, called Family Matters. And Family Matters allows events to be created where folks are able to come in and scan their images, have a little bit of guidance from personnel within the location, and also to have education to be able to organize their images, to be able to learn how to tell their stories, to learn about photo reminiscence therapy, and even to take better pictures. So how can programming like this help?
One big thing is that a lot of people don't know how to get out there, how to get the conversation started. So I think having an already organized organization that can help people navigate, I think is a great step forward. It's just finding that place where those people might go. Is once you know that and they get the resources, they will come out. So in my opinion, I see a lot of seniors, they don't like change, or they don't know what to do next. But if you have a program like this that can help them navigate what comes next, it can be incredibly profound. It's getting more people to know what to do to get them engaged.
We've engaged them. We'll take that step. Now they're able to come to the event. What benefits would those individuals get when they come to events like this?
It's a tremendous amount of benefits. First, they get out, they get to be social, they see other people, but hearing other people's stories that they relate to could create friendships. And you see this all the time. Some people say, "No, I'm going to stay home." They go to an event and now they've met another senior they're staying in touch with. They're using technology to communicate. It's a great way to actually help boost cognition for them by creating that relationship. And one thing, if you took a step back, if they never took that one step forward, they never would have made that friendship. So as simple as just showing up is a great step forward, but the benefits don't even stop there because there's so many different people. Every time you go to an event, you might meet somebody new or hear a different story. So it's not just going to one event. There's multiple events that they can go to that they can participate in that has a health benefit.
Putting myself in the place of a child as an example, and wanting to help get my older adult parent out to these events. What ideas do you have to compel those older adults to go?
Sometimes it's just saying, "Hey, I would really like you to come with me to this event." Sometimes it's just the offer. A lot of times people say, "Well, do you want to go?" "No, I don't want to go," in the end. But sometimes almost taking that out of it and saying, "Hey, mom, I would love for you to come with me to this event." It's a great way for you to learn about your parent, for them to see other stories, but you just opened a whole new world of socialization for your loved one.
I love that part of for you to be able to learn more about your parent, which ties to the memory station, right? So, mom, I see that you've got these boxes, and I don't know any of the stories inside those boxes. How might that be able to be used?
So honestly, it's a great tool because now you have something that you can bring to archive, to keep those stories, to record those stories. And honestly, once they start sharing a story, I can almost guarantee you it won't just be one photo. It'll be 20 photos with 20 different stories. And then you're going to leave and they're going to say, "I forgot to say this." And you're going to have to come back. But that's the beauty of it is it's multi-sequenced where they can come back several different times. But that shoebox is doing nothing sitting in your closet. Bringing it out and recording it and sharing it really brings it to life.
So let's further that. So the memory station, the whole concept around it is to make it easy to pull out those shoe boxes and to have large buttons to be able to scan and then to improve, restore, and then to record the voice memories, to then combine the images and the voice memories into a movie. As we're bringing forth the stories for the older adult, what are the benefits of doing that? And then for the child also to, come on, mom, let's go.
Well, the benefits are they get to share their legacy. So many people have such rich stories, and I hear this from time to time with my parents. They'll share a story, and I said, "I never even knew that." So there's a lot of stuff that can come out of that. Bringing them there, what I love that the program does is that it's not difficult to use. So it's simple, and then once it's done, you get a great quality product that you can revisit so many more times. I can almost guarantee you, once you go through it, you have that finished product. People are going to want to create more and more and more content. So, Rick, some people might be asking themselves, where do they find these products? So, if they wanted to find a Vivid-Pix solution or product, where would they go?
Thank you for asking. We're extremely proud of the support that we have received from societies, libraries, archives, and museums across America. In fact, we're installed in over 1,000 libraries across America, and some of those are quite prominent. For instance, Allen County Public Library in Fort Wayne, Indiana, which houses the largest genealogy center in a public library in America. And they have two of our memory stations there for patrons to be able to come in and scan their things and record their memories. We've also been adopted by Brigham Young University in Provo, Utah, where every one of their computers within the genealogy section of that genealogy library has Restore software. And we're installed in other society, library, and archives and museums across America. On our website, you're able to find our locations within a database, type in your zip code, and you're able to find the locations that are near you. And I'd be remiss not to take the opportunity to say, if one's too far away from you, make sure to mention it to your library. These are wonderful resources and programming available to the citizenship.
So, Rick, you've shared several places where people can find your solution. One thing that you've mentioned before is SLAM. Can you tell us what SLAM is and where they can find these solutions?
Absolutely. So SLAMs, societies, libraries, archives, and museums. And a society can be a genealogical or a historical society, libraries, archives, and museums. Different institutions use the programs in slightly different ways. Another location that we're quite proud of is at the International African American Museum in Charleston, South Carolina, where they actually have 8 of our stations, 4 of them within the Center for Family History, so that people are able to come in, get assistance to do their genealogical research, and to be able to scan things in order to be able to have the whole story come together. And the people that bring in their things are actually helping the museum by populating the museum assets in the cloud. So we have greater museum assets. And then in the outreach that, for instance, IAM does, is they actually go out into the community and have scanning events. And that allows people to bring forth their stories by them going out into the community. There are other ways that SLAMs are able to take advantage of the program. So, for instance, if the library wants to take their bookmobile concept further, so instead of just going out into senior living facilities, they're actually able to bring out a memory station. They're able to bring out programming into senior living facilities. And the senior living facilities now have experts that are coming to their location in order to be able to engage their older adults. So it's a wonderful symbiotic relationship. So, Josh, thanks for asking the question about slams and how people are using them. From your professional opinion, how do you think slams are able to best use these products?
Thanks, Rick, for asking. So, in lifestyle medicine, they often prescribe socialization because we know how important it is and how beneficial it is. In my opinion, I think every healthcare provider that works with a senior should be recommending these slams and that people should be going there to engage and sharing their legacy because we know the health benefits. We just need more people to get out of their homes and go participate in these programs.
Josh, thanks so much for joining us today to talk about the health benefits of reminiscing photoreminiscence therapy and how the SLAMs and the organizations that wish to bring different types of programming to the senior care communities can work together.
Thank you, Rick. Appreciate it.
Well, Josh, thank you so much for all of your thoughts, your knowledge, and your ideas on how we can marry, work together, the slams, societies, libraries, archives, and museums, and to connect those institutions with other important institutions like senior living facilities, home care organizations. So really, thank you so much for your insights.
You're welcome. And thank you for the opportunity, Rick.
So, Josh, thanks so much for your time today. It's been wonderful talking about the ways that we're able to help both the families of older adults, the older adults themselves, in order to be able to reminisce and enjoy reliving the important times of their life.
You're welcome, Rick. And thank you very much for the opportunity. I appreciate it.
You're welcome. So, Josh, thanks so much for your time. I truly respect your opinion and you finding the time to speak with us and others.
You're welcome, Rick. And thank you for the opportunity.